All right, so in this video, we're covering topic 1.5, state building in Africa from 1200 to 1450. So, one of the biggest misconceptions about Africa during this period is that it was isolated from the rest of the world. In reality, African societies were deeply connected to major trade networks that linked them to North Africa, the Middle East, India, and even China. So, as we move through this video, just keep in mind those AP World themes, or remember pieces. So, think about the political things that were going on in Africa at this time, the environmental things, the cultural things, economic, and even social things. Um, yes. So between 1200 and 1450, African states demonstrated continuity, innovation, and diversity. So just like societies elsewhere in the world, so African states really built on long-standing traditions while adapting to the changing circumstances and the growing population in the continent. So some societies developed powerful centralized kingdoms, such as Mali, while others really remained decentralized and they pretty much governed themselves through local communities and kinship networks. So one of the most important reasons these states expanded was trade. So the Trans-Saharan Trade Network connected West Africa to North Africa and the Islamic world, while the Indian Ocean Trade Network really connected East Africa to Arabia, India, and even China. So trade didn't just move goods, as we've been seeing throughout this unit. It spread ideas, religion, technologies, and even cultural practices. So the Kingdom of Mali is a perfect example because it built upon earlier trade networks and it used its wealth to become one of the most powerful African states. So as we move to today's video, just think about how trade contributed to political power and state building. So even as kingdoms expanded and became more powerful, many traditional leadership structures remained in place. So African rulers often combined spiritual authority with political authority to legitimize their rule. The kinship and clan relationships continue to serve as a foundation for many communities. So these systems really help organize the society and distribute power. So religion also reinforced continuity. So remember here another common theme how religion is kind of playing a big role in these different civilization and countries development. So indigenous African spiritual traditions really remained important throughout much of the continent, while Islam increasingly spread via trade networks and political networks. So a great example is Mali. So leaders such as Mansa Musa used Islam to really strengthen their political legitimacy and connect the empire to the broader Islamic world. However, though, many traditional African beliefs continue to exist alongside Islam. So traditional economic networks were also preserved. So those long established trade routes, exchanging gold, salt, ivory, and other valuable goods, continue to be to support economic growth and political stability. So just for you as an AP World student, just remember continuity means the African societies really adopted to change without abandoning the traditions that really shaped them for generations. So African states also demonstrated innovations through new forms of government and economic organizations. So the Kingdom of Mali, developed a very sophisticated bureaucracy that managed taxation, trade, and imperial administration. So this really helped oversee the movement of gold, salt, ivory, and enslaved people across large territories. And Mali really had a lock on the gold and salt trade due to where it was positioned in Africa. So Mali's wealth really came from, again, the gold and salt trade. So because West Africa contains some of the world's richest gold deposits, enormous wealth flowed into the empire. So the most famous ruler of Mali was Mansa Musa. So during his pilgrimage, or they call it a Hajj, to Mecca in 1324, he traveled with thousands of attendants and distributed so much gold in places like Cairo, Egypt, that the value of gold temporarily declined as a result. So because there was suddenly so much of it in circulation, the value of it really depleted. So Mansa Musa's pilgrimage demonstrated Mali's incredible wealth, and it really strengthened ties with the Islamic world. It also really attracted scholars, architectures, and religious leaders to West Africa. But at the same time, East Africa, so we're kind of moving to the other side of Africa, really developed a different model of success through these Swahili city states. So cities such as Kilwa and Zanzibar really became wealthy due to the Indian Ocean trade, and that is really a lot to do with where East Africa is on the coast of Africa. So politically, though, in these Swahili city states in East Africa, they had city states. So those city states were really independent, and they were ruled by local sultans or like kings, you could say, whose power was closely tied to trade. Economically, the Swahili city states exported gold, ivory, timber, iron, and even enslaved people, so much like West Africa, while they imported, brought in textiles, spices, porcelain, luxury goods from places like India, China, and the Middle East. Socially, though, those cities in East Africa, in the Swahili city states, became highly urbanized and cosmopolitan. So African, Arab, Persian, and Indian merchants usually interacted with each other a lot, and they even lived together. So as you can imagine, they would kind of blend cultures due to so much interaction. So culturally, though, the Swahili code, became one of the greatest examples of cultural blending in world history. So Islam spread through trade. So Arabic influenced local customs in East Africa, and the Swahili language developed as a combination of Bantu African languages and Arabic together. So in terms of innovation, though, the Swahili merchants used dhows. So dhows certain kind of ships that they would use to sail across and make trade easier on the Indian Ocean trade. And they also relied on wind patterns to travel throughout the Indian Ocean network. So those monsoon winds, because they were kind of predictable wind patterns, those merchants really studied them, and they were able to use them to make trade quicker and to be able to get back home at the same time each year. So finally, though, another kingdom we will talk about, Great Zimbabwe, demonstrated innovation through architecture. So they were known for their massive stone structures, such as the Great Enclosure, which reflected the wealth and the authority of rulers who controlled important trade routes and resources. So for AP students such as yourself, just remember Mali equals golden salt trade and Mansa Musa. The Swahili city states, well, let me also say Mali also is in West Africa. The Swahili city states equal East Africa, which also equals Indian Ocean trade, which also equals Islam, cultural blending, Dhow ships, and monsoon winds. And then for Zimbabwe, Great Zimbabwe equals the gold trade as well as stone architecture. So we're going to stop here for this video and we're going to pick up in part two.